All right, everybody. Welcome to episode 127 of the Fantasy Timeline, a proud member of Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network. I'm Josh at Real Fantasy TL. I'm with my main man, Drew at DR underscore PRA. Drew, how you doing, man?
Doing well. One more
Good.
night.
One more night, NFL Draft Eve. It's like Christmas Eve, but better. So if you're watching us live, which I hope you are, you will see that we have a very special guest. A great way to end the timeline draft month. We have Garrett Price at Dynasty Price. Garrett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
Good. Glad we could get you on. For some reason, and I don't even think this is humanly possible, but if someone listening or watching doesn't know who you are, just kind of tell them where you're at, what you're doing, where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am at Dynasty Price on Twitter. And basically, all of the work I do is with Dynasty Nerds. I'm one of the podcast hosts. I do a lot of stuff for like our nerd score and our rankings and different things like that. And then, like I said, you can find me all over Twitter, usually something about rookies and scouting and stuff like that. That's my lane. That's my happy place. So that chances are, if I'm on Twitter, that I'm talking about some sort of prospect, and there's a good chance that by this time next month, I'm already talking about some 23 prospect or something.
And I can't wait. I tell people all the time, um, people ask me, how do I have success in rookie drafts? And I go, I have a very small number of people that I listen to and kind of take what they say and kind of incorporate it into what I'm doing. Garrett, you are definitely one of those people because, like you said, May 2nd, you will probably be talking about CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, probably a guy from Norfolk State I've never heard of, and just pumping it out for the 23 draft when we're 360 days away from it.
I
Uh,
appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love the draft. I love this time of year, and for dynasty teams, that's the easiest way to win. If you can dominate your rookie drafts, you can hit on a couple sleepers here and there, not miss inside the top six or so picks. You're going to have a lot of success on your dynasty leagues.
and that's why I love rookie drafts because I feel like I'm coming in armed with just a little bit more than a lot of the other people that I'm in there with. But let's talk about somebody that Garrett, you and all the guys at Dynasty Nerds were high on coming into the 2021 draft, Javante Williams. So obviously, big news. Melvin Gordon comes back to the Broncos, 1 year, $5 million. Let's start with you, Garrett. How does this change, if it changes at all, your feelings about Javante's dynasty value?
Dynasty value wise, I don't think it really changes too much for me. Let's not forget, even though this does hurt him for the 2022 season, I think anybody would be lying if they said like, oh yeah, he's gonna have the same amount of points if Gordon was there or not. No, Gordon is here for a reason. They gave him the $5 million for a reason. So he's gonna cut into his work. But if they were really that high and he was that big a part of their plans, it wouldn't have taken him this long to be able to sign him. They wouldn't have allowed him to go to Baltimore on a visit. They wouldn't have allowed him to do these things. So I think it's a good insurance plan, and I think it's going to be a good backup breather for Javante Williams. But I still think Javante Williams is going to get the lion's share of the carries. We're talking about 65, 70%. Still not going to be that bell cow that we were hoping he would be, but I still think he's going to get plenty of touches. And let's not forget, he was already running back 17 last year. I think he can definitely improve on that with a much better quarterback, a much better offense, an offensive mind at head coach. So everything is still pointing up for Javante Williams. Now it's just looking like, instead of being in 2022, the RB4 on the year. He might be the RB9 on the year, which stinks. You're losing some fantasy points there, but I still think he's a great buy in Dynasty if you can buy him. But I think this is somewhat of a straw man argument because I've seen that everywhere. Like, buy Javonte Williams, buy Javonte Williams. I don't know who's giving a discount because either you paid a hefty price to get him this offseason or you were in love with him and you took him in your rookie drafts last year. So I don't know where the discount is going to come from. If there is some sort of window and discount, cool. Like, peace and blessings. That's awesome. But for the most part, it's still going to be costing you an arm and a leg to get Javonte Williams.
Drew, before I throw it to you, I just want to throw this one up here from our main man, Jerry Bagshaw. Excuse me.
Absolutely.
I would still take Javonte over the rookie 101. Jerry, you're damn right. I would too. Drew, go ahead. Does this change anything whatsoever for you?
No, I think Garrett's right. Overall value is going to be pretty steady. For maybe if you're in redraft this year, push them down a little bit, or you'll have to look at running back a little bit differently if you were expecting him to be, an RB1 that you could maybe forego RB2 for a while. But I mean, we're in that position in the league that we just drafted in the auction, right? We got Javonte as our RB1. We filled in with a couple of old guys and, maybe a couple of long shots at the rookie spot. And we'll see what happens because it's such a volatile position throughout the season. And, Gordon's 29. So I don't know what we expect from him in terms of taking a ton of work. Maybe it's a slower start for Javonte, which is fine. I mean, we lived through that last year. It's an adjustment. I get it. Gordon and Russ played together before in college, so there's some relationships and rapport there, which is cool. But I'm not concerned long term, beyond this year for Javonte. And this is where I think we have to temper our expectations too. The majority of the NFL is in a split backfield, in some sort of split, and some are heavier than others. We're really not finding more than I'm trying to think, maybe 3 or 4 guys that could potentially have 90% of the backfield to themselves. So temper your expectations. I still think Javonte is a special talent. I love, the first year, reading back through some of the stats, like, gosh, I forgot he put up over 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. It's like, yes, please. Yes, please. He's still going to be an RB1 this year, assuming he stays healthy. I was, as you're going through it, Garrett, I was thinking, maybe he drops to RB8, right? So that 8, 9, top 10 still is an expectation that I've got. So, and I don't know what a discount means at this point, so. Good luck.
Even though I'm very passionate about this, it was a mistake going last because you guys pretty much brought up all the points I would have brought up. So there's not much more for me to add to this. But I will tell you, I have respect. Drew and I are in a league together, and there was someone in that league who 5 minutes after the sleeper alert went out, offered me 110. And there were some force and fists thrown in there for Javonte. And that may be the fastest decline I ever hit on any dynasty trade ever. And I told him, I said, look, man, I love Javonte. Javonte was my dynasty RB2 before, obviously, Melvin Gordon signed. He's dropping he's dropping to 5. Like, he's not, he's so good. And people were like, well, they did the same thing last year. And I said, you're absolutely right. They had pretty much the same stats. But Javonte was a rookie, and Melvin Gordon had been a stud in the league for, the last 5 years or so. So you're telling me that a guy who's just his first taste of the NFL can keep pace with a very talented running back who has been on the lower edges of RB1 for the last 5 years, and they're the same guy. Guess what? Javonte is just going to get better. I don't think we can say the same for Melvin Gordon. So I told him he would have to blow me away with an offer. He told me to counter. I said, I already looked at your team. He's rebuilding. It's not very good. So I said, there's nothing there, but hey, if things change throughout the season, like, maybe we can work something out. But the 110 ain't doing it. Jerry got it right. It would be the 1 plus for me personally. I love Javonte. People that know me know I love Javonte. And this, I don't think it's as bad as Twitter's making it seem. even though Garrett, like you said, the people who have Javante right now aren't selling Javante. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of people, hey, buy low, buy the dip, make your offers. And I mean, hey, make your offers. Maybe you'll find one out of every 10 Javante owners who want to panic. But yeah, it's definitely not going to be me. So luckily, mostly slow news day because let's face it, the NFL wants us all to be focusing on the draft. So
Yeah.
let's move it along to what we do best and what we saw on the timeline. And this is a obviously very rookie heavy edition of the timeline because we have an expert here, so we want to get those expert opinions. This
I see
first
we're
one,
just throwing that term around very loosely today. So
listen, I actually don't use that word for very many people. So when I use it, because someone called me an analyst the other day, and I said that's not a word that should ever describe me. At least not in the fantasy football space. Maybe my day job, you can call me that, but when it comes to this, I'm just a guy that likes to talk about this game. So this first one here is from Jeff Matson at Jeff Matson RV. Anyone want to make a bet that Mitch Trubisky outscores Justin Fields in fantasy points this year? And actually, we're starting off with a non-rookie one here. But I thought this was interesting, and I know Drew, you love yourself some Justin Fields. So I want to start with you here. What do you think for this year? Do you think Mitch can outscore Justin Fields? Do you think that is a possibility?
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. If he starts all 17 weeks and holds it together and holds the starting job through the entire season, I could definitely see that as a possibility. I mean, Pittsburgh's got good weapons for him, so there's no reason that he couldn't. You would assume that he's learned some things in the last couple of years, working with the Bills, and yeah, I think there's certainly that's in the range of outcomes there. So would I make a bet that he would outscore Justin Fields? I don't think I would take that bet. I would like to think that Fields takes a step forward and that they do right by him. But they could rebuild for another year, right? And they could let him continue to grow. And it might be next year before they actually have a full offense around Fields. But I believe in his ability to run. I believe in his talent overall and the flashes that we saw last year in the few games that he was able to produce. So my money would still be on Justin Fields over Trubisky, but interesting is a very good word. I hadn't put this kind of a comparison in my mind until I saw this on the show sheet. So it's a fun one.
So before we get to Garrett and listen to what he thinks about this, to make this show a little bit more fun, you said you would put your money on Justin Fields. Why don't we do our standard $5 bet for charity? I will take Mitch, the former Buffalo Bill of your favorite team, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
You can take Justin Fields, most fantasy points on the year. What do you think?
I'm down.
Let's do it. See, I have a little bit of fun on the show. Obviously, if everyone doesn't know, anytime Drew and I make a bet on this show, whoever loses just donates to the winner's charity. So we make it fun, but we also like to help out a little bit. So, all right, Garrett, I just had to throw that in there before we got to you. What do you think? What do you think about this? Mitch Trubisky versus Justin Fields. Who do you think will end up on the winning side of this? Did I just do something fun for the show, or do you think I can actually win this thing?
I think it's going to be pretty tight. Overall, I lean the Justin Fields side. I think just his rushing upside, and we know that Mitch can run a little bit too, but I think his rushing ceiling is going to be the thing that puts him over the top. But it wouldn't surprise me if Justin Fields comes in as quarterback 15 and Mitch Trubisky comes in at 16, or something like that. Like I think they're both at this point in their careers these mid-range quarterback twos. Obviously, Fields has the higher upside, the higher ceiling, but Trubisky has the much better weapons. So it's going to be a really interesting battle between the two, the former Bears quarterback versus the current Bears quarterback. So it'll be interesting. But if I had to pick a side, it would be Justin Fields.
All right. So
I like it.
It looks like Drew's got
Might win one finally.
I wouldn't go that far. Garrett, just for some context, Drew lost every single bet that we made last year.
Oh no.
So
I'm a giving person. I'm a giving
There you
person.
go.
He is on a streak like none other in sports right now, and I think he keeps it going with this one. I think Mitch shocks the world. Now, obviously, tomorrow, after they take Kenny Pickett or Sam Howell, I'll be singing a different tune. But until then,
I think that's the other part of this is we know Justin Fields is starting all the games barring injury. I'm pretty sure Mitch is, but I don't know.
yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens with these quarterbacks. There was I think it was Ian Rappaport said yesterday that there seems to be a lot of chatter that teams are going to look to trade into the 20s to try to get quarterbacks. So we might actually see a QB run somewhere in the 20s, which could be interesting. That would mean that there's still a lot of quarterbacks available in the 20s, which I don't think anyone would be surprised by. But I think seeing a run would surprise people. So that's why we love the draft, man, because anything can happen. We 3 or 4 straight quarterbacks going for somewhere in the 20s. So there we go. This next one here is from Tony FF at It's Just Fantasy _. What rookie are you not sold on? So Garrett, I want to start with you first here. What rookie are you not sold on?
It's interesting because this has been my guy for a while, and it's like becoming a little bit too cool. So like I almost want to move off of it. But I'm not the biggest Treylon Burks guy. I think there's a lot of things in his game that not necessarily are red flags, but there's a lot of like yellow flags. When you're talking about some of the safer prospects, I think, Garrett Wilson is pretty safe. I think Jameson Williams is pretty safe. I don't know what to make of Treylon Burks. I mean, honestly, my comp for him was Laviska Shenault, which depending on who you are, I guess you might love that or hate that. I don't know. Laviska has like some of like the most hardcore truthers I've ever seen for somebody that has done like nothing in the league. But I don't know. I know he's probably not going to be able to be a traditional X, at least not right away. He's going to need some time to develop, but he can do some dynamic things on the field. He is an incredibly fast player. We know his GPS time was incredible, even though his 40 might not have reflected that. So he's an interesting prospect, but very unrefined. I didn't love that he didn't do well in the drills and then chose to not do those same drills at his pro day. You would think with more practice and, getting better start off the line and things like that, he would have the competitive spirit in him would have wanted to prove doubters wrong. And for him to just rest on his laurels that weren't that good was surprising to me. So I don't know. There's just enough of those like questionable things there that I think people are going to draft him above where I'm willing to take him.
All right, before we get to more, Jerry again, George Pickens is my number 1 wide receiver in the draft.
Spicy.
Not really sold on many of the others. That people love Pickens, but I don't know if I've seen anyone say that Pickens is their one. So, Jerry, you're on an island, but sometimes, man, being on an island means you got that beach all to your. So, I want to take this one and Twitter. I don't know if this is reality, but Twitter, I think, has made this one of the most polarizing players in the draft. I'm not sold on Drake London.
Okay.
I get it. He is a big boy. and he catches well, but man, I I get scared when these guys can't separate. And I know there's people who are like, well, if you really look at it, he can kind of separate, and you have to understand that the quarterback at USC was trash. And hey, listen, I agree with that part of it. The quarterback last year at USC was trash. That's why he's not there anymore. He gone. So, but I mean, you mentioned Traylon Burks. Traylon Burks is getting the ball thrown to him by, Arkansas, substitute teachers, and maybe the mailman. Uh, these are the guys throwing to Traylon Burks,
Yeah.
and Traylon Burks had that production. We don't really hear that. He can't separate. The actually what we hear a lot about with Traylon Burks is that he blows by SEC corners. So Drake London scares me, and I think he is one of the most polarizing players on Twitter. You either love Drake London, or you were kind of like me, and you're like, I'm not sold on him. I don't, I think it's going to be an epic fail if he gets drafted in the top 10. So yeah, that's my guy, Drake London. I'm not sold. I know a lot of people are, and that's what's great about this, man. We can be dead right on, and we brought up Javante earlier. You guys at the Nerds were like Javante to the moon before the draft. This wasn't,
Yeah.
hindsight is 2020. And I know you guys got a lot of flack for, I think Javante was your RB1, right?
He was. Yep.
And
It
you guys
was
got you guys
bold at
got
the
a
time.
yeah, you guys got a lot of flack for that. And
Yep.
now we're looking at it and we're like, oh yeah, like, even with Melvin Gordon coming back, we're like, yeah, Javante, RB1, of course.
That
We knew it
guy.
the whole time. So yeah, my guy is Drake London. Drew, who do you got? What rookie are you just not sold on?
This is going to be changing my tune a little bit here. I think for the last couple of months, I was pretty securely on the Malik Willis 101 in Superflex. But I think after watching Brees Hall go through the combine, and for the three teams that I have the 101, I am pretty certain I'm going to take Brees Hall 101 in all three leagues, regardless of need.
Nice.
The league that we're in, the sleeper league, I've got the 102, so I will take Malik Willis at the 102 because I think his value will be insulated, but it won't be with the initial intent to hold him as a quarterback. Most likely, it will be to see who will pay up for him if he goes to a situation where he takes over midseason or gets to start the last couple of weeks, and then maybe next off season see who wants to trade for need when you should be trading for value. So I think as of probably a couple of weeks ago, I kind of made my mind up that anywhere that I've got the 101, especially where I've only got the 101 and nothing behind it, it's going to be Brees Hall going there for me, regardless of team need.
I'm with you on that one. I have the 102 in two leagues. One of those leagues, it was the Timeline Listener League, and we actually finished in third place, but made a trade to get the 102. And I'm just praying both of those leagues are super flex, and I'm just praying that we hear it all the time. Super flex, you got to take the quarterback no matter what. Take the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that Malik Willis goes 101 in both of those leagues, and I like Malik Willis, so this isn't even a anti Malik Willis talk here, but boy, give me that Brees Hall, man.
And Willis isn't good enough, I don't think, as a prospect at this point to push him over Brees Hall, where I'm going to keep him long term. It is all about the value there. Because again, if you put Malik Willis in last year's class, I'm not taking him before Justin Fields. I'm not taking him before Trevor Lawrence. I'm not taking him before probably even Trey Lance. And I'm not a huge Trey Lance guy either. So yeah, I think we see where quarterbacks, we have expectations. You have high expectations, Josh, for Trevor Lawrence this year and a new coaching regime, top prospect. And who knows, this will be a telling year for him if he really puts it together, if he can, rise above all the things that were holding him back. But those top end quarterback prospects that everybody gets excited about, they have a really long shelf life where people still think they're fresh.
I don't know if being better than Tua is high expectations for Trevor Lawrence, but that's the bet we made. So I don't know. I don't know if we call that high expectations, but yeah, I mean, I guess if that's the bar, yes, I think big things for Trevor Lawrence. But I actually saw a very interesting debate between our DAP Network brother Rocky, the trade addict, the trade junkie himself, and I believe it was Izzy from DTC,
Yeah.
and Izzy was coming from the point of view that Malik Willis should be the 101 in a super flex no matter what because of the insulated value that quarterbacks have. And I think we're entering a whole new world in the NFL, and we've kind of seen it over the last 2 years where, you know, 101 Jared Goff, who just got a contract extension, gets shipped off with 2 firsts for Matt Stafford. We've seen Russ get shipped off. Baker is technically with a job, but this was a guy a couple years ago that we thought was going to be a top 5 QB, and he is right now on a path to not start a single game unless Deshaun Watson catches a suspension from the NFL. So, I mean, I don't know. I think we're in a new world where like teams are ready to jettison a guy if he's not performing to try to get a guy in there who can perform. I mean, we saw the Cardinals do it a few years ago. They draft Josh Rosen in the top 10 and then the next year draft Kyler Murray with the 101. I don't think we're in as people would say your dad's NFL where listen, you draft a guy with a top 5 pick, he's your quarterback for 10 years unless he just completely flames out of the league. I mean, I think at this point, if you're not performing, you're gone. We saw it with Carson Wentz. He got shipped out after kind of like half of a bad year in Philly. Now, obviously, that was a good move by the Eagles because he hasn't been really good since. But and then he got shipped out again to Washington after Indianapolis said, "Well, this guy can't take us to the playoffs and possibly take us to a Super Bowl." Now they have Matt Ryan. So I don't know if that insulated value is there anymore because it seems like NFL teams are willing to just ship those guys out. I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing or if I'm just looking at way too small of a sample size.
No, I would agree with you. We were actually talking about the same subject on Dynasty Nerds podcast last night, where it's basically, do we think this guy is capable to getting us to a Super Bowl? If that answer is no, then it doesn't matter how long they've been there or haven't been there. It's time to move on to the next guy. And that's really just kind of where it's at in the NFL. So there's about 10, 12 guys where I think you can feel pretty solid about. And then after that, it's anyone's guess. It really is.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if this continues next year as well. Because I
Mhm.
mean, man, how many quarterbacks did we see get moved during this offseason? I mean, it seems like almost every team has a new starting quarterback. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see if this trend continues. But that
I'm
was
curious
something.
how long do you guys think that Trey Lance still demands a high price?
I think you should get it now if that's what you want to do because I understand that Jimmy Garoppolo had shoulder surgery, but like I just said, with all the QB movement going around, either the asking price for the 49ers is way too high, or everyone else in the league is either not offering anything or offering something so low that the 49ers think it's in their best interest to keep him around. Maybe the draft changed that. Maybe day 2 we see Jimmy G get traded, but it's a little worrisome that he's still on the roster going into the draft tomorrow.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm not the biggest Trey Lance guy, and where I've seen him be taken in drafts, And granted, you could make similar arguments for Trevor Lawrence, but off of not a lot, and what we saw was just meh. It's tough because you're gonna have to invest late first, early second round pick in him in super flex drafts in startups. So that's, I mean, when you could be getting, a lot of other young quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, tight end, like there's a lot of good young talent in the NFL right now. That's just a lot of risk. So if I can get anywhere a top 3 startup value for him in a trade, I would be willing to make that deal.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm looking at with Willis too. Is I think I'm committing in that league that we're in, Josh. Give myself maybe a year to figure out what I think is going to be in a top end value for him to get a return there. Because there's part of me that wonders, 6 months from now, could I get Malik Willis plus a decent bit for Brees Hall, especially if Brees Hall walks into a situation where he can contribute by the end of September, early October, where he figures it out and it shows that he's got the goods to make it in the league. So yeah, I think that's where for me, maybe I got a little too high on some of the initial Twitter feed of where Malik Willis could be, the arm talent, the separation from him. Because I mean, after him, it's such a big drop to who's the QB2 in this class, right? So, the conservative side of me says, well, sure, I want the QB1 in this class because of the value. But if in 6 months, his value dips, because then, I think a lot of people are watching to see what happens with Trey Lance to be kind of the writing on the wall for Malik Willis. So if Lance drops off in 4 months, 5 months, that doesn't give Malik Willis truthers a whole lot of room to go and get their value back or add value there. So yeah, I think that's for me where the biggest concern about taking him 101, where I can either get a guy that I think will contribute over the next few years, regardless of where he goes, regardless of what the competition looks like. So yeah, I think that's what's pulled me off Malik Willis at this point as the 101. And honestly, if I have the 102 somewhere and he's sitting there looking at me, I think I'm still looking to trade back and gain value in most cases.
Now, I think that if I'll just play devil's advocate here. I think if Malik Willis goes in the top 10 besides Carolina, because I think if he goes to Carolina, he's probably going to start. If he doesn't start day one, it'll be a quick turnaround for him to start. But if he goes to Atlanta, I can see Atlanta adding Marcus Mariota here, try to build up Malik Willis, help him, work out his deficiencies, and he'll have a very much a Trey Lance type first season where, all right, we didn't see him that much. We were kind of high on him last year, and he insulates his value for a year. Same thing with a team like Seattle, who's also in the top 10 and could use a quarterback. I honestly think, as crazy as this sounds, they would let Drew Lock run it for a year. Just because, again, this is, if you trade Russ away, this is more of a long-term thing than just, can we win 10 games and make the playoffs this year? Because I don't care if it's Malik Willis or Drew Lock. Seattle's not winning 10 games. So,
Right.
just to play devil's advocate, I think maybe Malik Willis can insulate for a year, but I think we're gonna be having a lot of the same conversations that we just had. Garrett brought it up, like, all right, like Trey Lance didn't do a lot, and there's crazy value, and the Malik Willis owners might kind of cash in on the same thing next year if he doesn't get a lot of playing time. It's like, well, he was the 101 last year, and let's make a trade, and so that's just playing devil's advocate, though. I just wanted to bring that up. But all right, let's move on to the next one here. Joe O'Leary at the HQ Nerd. Garrett Wilson kind of reminds me of how Justin Jefferson was viewed coming in. An extremely safe option in a loaded college wide receiver room with some apprehension about ceiling. I'm not saying Wilson is Justin Jefferson, but I'm expecting an immediate day one impact player. Oh, I agree with you. I think he is going to be an immediate day one impact player. And if these rumors are true about what the Jets are trying to give up to get Debo, whew, I mean, kind of the whole point of this thing was kind of stripping it down and getting these draft assets so that you can build up your team, giving up 3 or 4 picks for Debo. And I love Debo. I've loved Debo out of South Carolina. But I mean, you have a lot of deficiencies on that Jets team, even though I think they have done some really good things over the last couple of years. And just saying, like, all right, let's give up 3 or 4 picks to get Debo when you're still probably at least a draft class away is crazy. But again, if they keep those picks and they take Garrett Wilson at 10, now all of a sudden you still have all those additional picks to do things with. And, you might build a team, like you said, that kind of leads to a impactful season one for Garrett Wilson. Garrett, before we go to you, do you remember where you had Justin Jefferson ranked coming into that draft?
I had him too low. I think, well, almost everybody had him too low if they didn't have him as the top receiver in the class, basically.
That's true.
But Matt actually had him as his, I believe, his wide receiver too, coming in that year. So he was on it. I was too low. I had him at my wide receiver, I believe, 6 that year. And I fell victim to Jalen Rager at wide receiver too, and
Mhm.
still regret that one. But I had him in the same tier as like Michael Pittman, T. Higgins. They were kind of all on that same tier for me. So I'm pretty sure I had him at 5, 6, something like that.
Man, me and Matt, I'll have to reach out to Matt because I also had him as my wide receiver too, and
Nice.
as our DAP network brother, I'll bring up Rocky again because he always likes to remind me that I was never on Jalen Rager, not coming out of the draft. I did not see, and I got roasted for this one too. I was like, Jalen Rager is not going to be good in the league. And people were like, you're dumb. And I was like, I mean, that's true, but like it still doesn't take away from the fact that I don't think he's going to be good in the league. Like,
Sure.
so yeah. But listen, don't feel bad about Jalen Rager. A lot of people got brought into Jalen Rager because trust me, my DM mentions were on fire every day when I put out an anti Jalen Rager take or said something on the show.
Sure.
I would get you're dumb, and I'd be like, I mean, fair. I'm not going to argue that, um, but yeah, what do you think about Garrett Wilson, and do you think he can be just an impact player day one?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's the safest player outside of Brees Hall in this class. And honestly, at this point, even in super flex drafts, I'm going Brees Hall and then I'm going Garrett Wilson. Now we'll see what happens once the landing spot and all that happens. I usually don't let that sway me too much. I try to stick with my original evaluations as much as I possibly can, and I think he's a fantastic receiver so far. As far as my tape scores go, my top 4 receivers that I've graded over the past, this would be the 3rd season of it. It would be Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase was 2, Garrett Wilson was 3, and then CD Lamb was 4. So those have been
Wow.
my top 4 graded coming out of college. And obviously, if I could do it over again, Justin Jefferson would be in that group,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
cannot. But yeah, so that's kind of how the scores have shaken out for me. So yeah, I'm very high on Garrett Wilson. I think he's got good ceiling, but I think even more importantly, he's incredibly safe.
Yeah, Drew, what do you think, man? Is Garrett Wilson just gonna hit the ground running, or do you think maybe he needs a little bit more runway before he takes off?
It's tough because I mean, if we're gonna say that he's gonna do a similar path as Jefferson, I mean, there were a lot of people that were disappointed for Justin Jefferson until October hit, right? Um, it took a few games. He popped a little bit and had a couple of flashy plays, maybe, or a couple of solid games in September that for a rookie. But then once October turned to November, and then it's like, holy crap, this kid is for real. So I don't know that I expect any receiver to just step in and, maybe Jamar Chase last year was the closest that we had that expectation. But even though there's the questions of, great, you took a year off, we'll see what really happens here. And he made a pretty immediate impact, which I think when we graded out prospects, community told us he was going to be something special, and he is. So yeah, I would not be. I'd be patient if you're a fan of Garrett Wilson and you're a believer in the talent there. And again, if he's the type of receiver, I think that should be pretty good wherever he goes. Right? I'm certainly not a film guy by any means. I barely watch college football at this point in my life, but be patient is what I'd say. You've got some guys that have really come on. Even CeeDee Lamb, it took a while. It was a Thanksgiving game before he really had like a highlight reel play against the Vikings, right? So it was, some of these guys, it just takes a little time to make that chemistry, build the trust. But if you're a Garrett Wilson guy or person, be patient with him for a few weeks. Don't let somebody sell you on the idea that, maybe he doesn't have the goods, or maybe Chris Olave was the better Ohio State guy that you should have gone after. So, but yeah, I think he'll make an impact year one. I have no idea how soon it'll be though.
Oh yeah, I won't let anyone spread any lies that Olave was ever better than Garrett Wilson ever in life. I won't let those lies stand. But yeah, I mean, I think the good thing, and I don't know if that's the right word, but the good thing about the draft is that as a community, we're so low on this draft class. I think even if you take Garrett Wilson, I mean, if you're Garrett Price, if you take him at 2, but if you're taking him at 3 or kind of where you see all the rookie mocks taking him, he's probably like, you're not really probably forcing yourself to push him into your lineup. You're probably like, hey, I took this guy at 103, but this is a low, we had low opinions about this class. I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just, when he starts blowing up, then we'll kind of put him into the lineup and see what happens. I have a feeling he's going to be a Jet. And that will be a very interesting wide receiver room with him and Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. And, it'll really
Braxton Berrios.
The man, the myth, the legend, Braxton
Won some people
Berrios.
some leagues last year.
Hey, listen, I had Braxton Berrios on a deep 16-team league, and I definitely had to start Braxton Berrios in some weeks, and it was good times usually when I had to start him. So, but yeah, if they do that and kind of build around Zach Wilson and kind of, get to really see if he's the man that they thought he would be, taking him at 2. So that would be fun. That's one of my prediction picks is Garrett Wilson at 10. So we'll see if I'm right. The only other guarantee is that Dallas is Treylon Burks at 24, but after Garrett disparaged Treylon Burks, now I'm sitting here hoping that I'm wrong about that one. But all right, cool. Let's move on to this one here. Jeff Bell at 4, whom Jay Bell tolls. People are high on Notre Dame running back Kyren Williams. I don't see it at all. So he doesn't see it. So Garrett, do you see anything with Kyren Williams? Because I'm kind of on Jeff's side here. Like, I hear a lot of people talking about him, and I hear a lot of people saying that he could be like the sleeper guy that you grab, that you're happy getting. And I'm like I don't get it. But am I wrong, Garrett? Am I missing something here?
Depends what your expectations of Kyren Williams are. I have him currently, I believe, is my RB6 in the class. So I do like Kyren Williams, but you have to look at what he does well. He is not a fantastic athlete. The combine proved that. If you watch this tape, you're not surprised. He never looked overly fast. He never looked overly, elusive or explosive. But what he does well is he is an incredible pass catcher out of the backfield, can run actually some really crisp routes, just like a slot receiver would, and is one of the best pass blockers that I've evaluated so far over these past few drafts. So when you're looking at somebody to fill a third down role, I don't know that you can find somebody better over the past few years to specifically just fill a third down role. I don't think he's ever going to be a feature back. I don't think he's ever going to be a lead back, but I think he's going to be a really, really good third down running back for your team. So if your expectation of him is to get, 180 rushes and, catch 80 passes, well, you're going to be disappointed. But if your expectation of him is, it might take a year or two, but he's a smart player. And in 2 years, we see him get 50 rushes and 80 receptions, then I think you're going to be thrilled.
I like that. Drew, you have any thoughts about Kyren Williams?
Yeah, I'm hearing Garrett talk through here, and yeah, I think I'm looking at things at face value, and I don't have a whole lot of interest in him. If somebody wants to trade up where maybe he's going at ADP for rookie drafts, I'll most likely entertain those offers. But I mean, so are you thinking more like a James White kind of a guy here, who
Yeah, probably in that type of role. We've seen him do it. Nyheim Hines did that for a while. Tariq Cohen was in that kind of role for a while. Darren Sproles, like, it's going to be in that type of lane. And I don't think he's necessarily going to win in the exact same ways that some of those guys did. But great pass catcher, more physical than some of those players that we talked about. But I think he's going to be a really good third down back.
Yeah, I mean, he's pushing the 200-pound mark, which I've heard is kind of important to get on the field and feel like he can hold his own there. So I like that. I think he can gain that over the summer pretty easily with the training program. So I don't mind taking him, but I don't know. I don't do rankings. I think 6 feels a little high, but I don't know what order I'd put guys ahead of him. So,
well, we have to factor in at 6 with like 10 receivers going first. So that's part of it is, it's a much deeper receiver class.
Yeah. So, I mean, who do you have after, do you have your running back ranks through, the top?
Yeah.
7 or 8? So who do you have right before him, right after him?
Yeah. Right before him, off the top of my head, I know I have Zamir White at 4, Tyler Beatty right ahead of him. And then right behind him, I have Rashad White and Dameon Pierce. So, and it's really from not Zamir, but from Beatty all the way through those 4 guys are all pretty fluid. I mean, you could put those in almost any order for me. When you look at my score for tape score, they're almost all identical tape score wise.
Nice.
Cool,
yeah, I
cool.
think I've had Rashad White probably. I prefer Rashad White over him, but yeah, I think that's the general consensus is once you hit a certain tier after the top 2 or 3 guys, it's kind of like pick your order for the next few.
Sure.
So I don't know if you guys saw the sleeper alert that came in a few minutes ago. Apparently the Las Vegas Raiders told Darren Waller that they are not trading him. So that'll be interesting. I always thought that was kind of a weird rumor that the Packers were interested in Waller, considering they traded Devonta Adams to
Right.
Las Vegas. I mean, if you were that interested, why didn't you kind of build a trade around getting Darren Waller and maybe another
Right.
pick or something? So I always thought it was kind of weird that it's like, hey, you guys just made a trade not that long ago. You could have got that guy.
Yep.
So
100%.
but it looks like now we also know that teams lie. So he could be traded on day 1 of the draft, and we're all
No.
sitting here like, oh, hey, the team told them, So, but Garrett, since we have a few extra minutes, can you give the listeners some late round guys that maybe you have your eyes on that you like, that maybe other people like them, maybe other people don't? In your rookie drafts, you're going to try to snag these guys because you think there's some upside to get some diamonds in the rough there.
If we're going to go real deep, so we're talking like 4th round, 5th round of your rookie draft, there's 2 players that I'm going to probably heavily target. The first one is Isaiah Weston. He's a receiver out of Northern Iowa. He went to the combine, and as far as his relative athletic score, he actually had the 3rd best relative athletic score of any guy at the wide receiver position since 1980. So crushed the 40. Well, he's a big guy to begin with, 6'4", roughly 220 pounds. So he's a big kid. Ran a 4.43 40. Put up 20 or 21 reps on the bench. So he's a strong kid. But then also his vertical was over 40 inches. He had an incredible broad jump. So he's just a fantastic athlete. And I think he's a big play waiting to happen. His tape actually reminded me a lot of Alec Pierce. So if you like Alec Pierce, you're probably going to like Isaiah Weston. Both guys that are like these almost like fringe tight ends, but they're just such good athletes that they're receivers is really kind of how it worked out. So if you like one, you'll probably like the other. And then at the running back position, it's tough late in drafts to get a guy that has the potential to be a 3-down back, because usually it's, okay, they're a 3rd down guy or they're between the tackles grinder. They don't have the ability to necessarily do both. One guy that has that size, that speed, that ability to potentially do that. And granted, we're talking about a guy that's probably going to get taken in the 6th round of the NFL draft. So this is all solely based on upside. But I really like Devontae Price out of Florida International University, 6'1". So he's got really good height that of running back, 200, and he can clearly add more weight too. He actually looks almost a tiny bit lanky at times, but he ran a 4.4 flat at the combine. So he's got the wheels at that size. We saw him miss some time due to injury, but he did get the Senior Bowl invite, did pretty well there at the Senior Bowl, got the combine invite as well. And there were some things on tape that I liked. I thought he had good feel. I thought he had decent strength and obviously good long speed. So these are both upside plays. Once I get honestly past the halfway point in the 2nd round, I'm solely going for upside. Give me somebody that could just, totally do something amazing, because getting a safe player in the 3rd round is like, oh, great, I got my wide receiver 5. Cool. So I'm all about ceiling once you get to that point. I think those 2 players have the highest.
Now, could there be another reason why you're high on Devonta Price? I'm just saying.
I mean, he has a great last name. I'm not going to argue that.
I
between him and Garrett Wilson, I think they're the 2 best players in the class.
Zero bias.
Yeah. But no, those are some good players, and I totally agree with you. When I get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that I'm just I'm looking for a guy that is either going to blow up or is just going to be on the waiver wire.
Yeah,
and
then you know what to do with them.
Yeah, we'll do. You said like, cool. I have the 28th guy on my 30-man roster. Like,
right.
Awesome. So, you're always sitting there going, well, maybe he can do something. And you're letting other players pass you by because you're hoping that, like you said, your wide receiver 5, your wide receiver 6 takes the next step and does something. And yeah, like I'm with you. I'm all just about like, usually a lot of times in 4th, 5th rounds, I'll get the who, who's this guy you drafted? This guy? And I'm like, listen, guy's probably going to be on the waiver wire, this time next year. But on the off chance, like you said, you mentioned a relative athletic score, I like getting the guys that nobody hears about that are high in that and just going like, hey, either this is going to work out for me or I blew a 4th round pick and who cares? Like,
Exactly.
I got one of those next year too. I'll just do this all over again. So that's awesome. One more thing I wanted to ask you since I have you here. Do you have like a rookie draft strategy or rookie draft strategies that you use that you found to be successful?
Yeah, for me, it's the tried and true method of don't worry about need. Just take the best player available. Just draft the best guy. You can always make trades later to fill positions of need, but if you draft a lower tier player, their value is significantly lower. And so always just take the best available guy. I also with late round late round guys, I have a couple things. So I like to see them have two of these three things for me to want to take a flyer on them. One, did they have good tape? Obviously, you have to watch tape in order to have a feel for that. But did they have good tape? Two, how did they do at the combine? Did they do well at the combine? Because sometimes this is those athletic freaks get an opportunity at least, whereas other guys that don't have that same type of ability might not get that chance. And then three, what's the path to success for them? So what's the roster look like ahead of them? Is there somebody that already does the same type of thing on their roster, or do they bring something unique to the table where they could see an ascension through? If they have two of those three things, I'm probably willing to take a shot on them in my third round or later. If I can't say confidently that they do at least two of those three things, I'm looking for another prospect.
And I will sort of dispute one point with you. You
Sure.
actually, you actually don't have to watch tape because if you're smart and you get the Dynasty Nerds GM, you get the film room, and also if you follow the nerds on YouTube, you guys will break down prospects, and I love watching those things. They're usually about 45 minutes long, depending on the
Sure.
player. But man, you guys just get so deep, and it's so interesting to watch because I can watch tape, and I always say I don't claim to be a tape guy because I'm average at best, and I don't claim to be an analytics guy because I'm average at best. And literally, there's no reason for me to try to be an expert in either because I never will be. So I can see things, but man, you guys will break down a player for 40, 45 minutes, and you guys get into the nitty gritty, and you guys are seeing things that are important or vital to, hey, is this guy good? Can he do this well? Can he not do this well? Maybe the community is saying a guy can do something well, but you guys break it down and you're like, maybe we're a little too high on this aspect of this player's
Sure.
game. And so um
I appreciate it.
again, listen, I don't say anything that I don't truly believe in because it's not me and it doesn't make any sense to. But yeah, I mean, you can watch film and hey, and if you're good at it, by the way, do that. Like I'm not saying, hey, if you're good at watching film, stop and don't do it. But for a guy like me who is average at best, I like getting a little bit more of an expert's point of view. I mean, it's kind of like having a scout just sit next to you and be like, all right, like here are all the things I see. And you could take it, you could, I mean, there's no pressure, but it's better than having, your buddy who played, football in middle school try around for you. That's kind of where I'm at. Like I'm the middle school football player. Like, hey, like this is what I see. Or you can have like, actual experts do it for you. So that's my only dispute. And technically it's not really a dispute, but
Well, no, I appreciate the love, man. I appreciate the love. We do our best to try to break through the noise and just to break things down in a way that you don't have to have had a ton of experience watching film or played college football or something like that, and try to do it in digestible ways. So I appreciate it.
yeah, yeah. And honestly, I'll tell all the listeners, I do this to try to scam a discount later on. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. Um, but Drew's right. I am terrible. But yeah. So listen, we're at about the hour mark here, and honestly, we're not going to go much longer because let's face it, we're all we need to get our sleep, man. The draft is tomorrow.
That's right.
We got cheering to do. We have screaming to do.
Yeah.
We have a lot of watching videos on Twitter of people taking a baseball bat or a bowling ball or whatever they want to their TVs. So that's all going to take a lot of energy. Plus, let's face it, we uh, we aren't going to be running on our treadmills and eating salad that day. There's going to be a lot of pizza, a lot of wings, a lot of nachos going on. So we need to rest up now so that we're in prime shape for that tomorrow. So
That's right.
on the way out, Garrett, thank you so much for coming on, man. You've come on, I
Mhm.
think, the last 3 years now. Um, I, we love the draft on the timeline, so we try to get as many of just Devi and just college guys who know what they're talking about in here to help our listeners out. So appreciate you coming on, helping our listeners out. Hopefully they didn't listen to that part about the deep sleepers because I want to get those guys in all my leagues. So appreciate it. Once more, just in case people came in late to the live stream here. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, you can find basically all my work over at Dynasty Nerds, whether that be podcasts or the Nerd Score, which is kind of all the stuff I've been talking about. It's our tape score, and we break it down for you. Here's how it all plays out. Or you can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price talking some sort of prospect nonsense.
Love it, love it. And before I get to the full song and dance on the outro that I do, remember tomorrow, right here, if you're watching this live on YouTube, it is the DAP Network Draft Extravaganza. We're gonna have the whole family here. We're gonna have us, the guys from Trade Addicts, the guys from Dynasty Junkies. We have Casey Kasem from Keeping It Real with Casey Kasem. We got the immortal Bobby Koch. We have some other surprises in store. So listen, put it on your TV, put on ESPN, NFL Network, whatever you like, and then mute those bad boys because let's face it, they're usually like 3 picks behind anyway. Come on over here, listen to us. We're starting at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be here. We're gonna go all the way through from pick 1, which the Jags look like they're trying to mess up right now, to pick 32, which I don't think will be the Detroit Lions. I think it'll be somebody else. And we're going to talk about these guys. We're going to talk about fantasy implications and guys that don't really have fantasy implications. They might have fantasy implications. So you'll have to stay tuned, see what we got to say about all these guys. But it's going to be a lot of smart people, a lot of fun people doing their thing. So on the way out, thank you to everybody that was in the chat. Chat was awesome. Our man Jerry was just firing them away. I was reading them, talking about some of them. It was a great time. Everyone else who was in and out, appreciate you guys too. If you couldn't catch us live and you're listening to us in podcast form, appreciate you guys too. An hour and 2 minutes. It's a lot of time to do anything, and you decided to choose us and listen to us, so we are really appreciative of that. Just remember, if you kind of just randomly found us, hit subscribe. If you're already subscribed, and you can leave a rate and review, those are helpful. There apparently are algorithms that are based off of that. I don't know. I mean, but yeah, leave a rate and review. Tell us what we've done well. Hey, tell us what we've done bad. We read those too. I mean, they're important.
Mhm.
So on that note, Drew, we are out of here.
Late.